The Seattle Kraken welcomed back Brandon Tanev to Climate Pledge Arena with a tribute video. And he returns the favor by sending Shane Wright shoulder first into the boards. Fair or foul? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, Seattle hockey fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, that is, every single day. Erica Ayala here on the road, and I've said it a few times. I got to take my own advice. Whenever you have a chance, and by you, I mean me, whenever I have a chance to wear the UMA hat with this Seattle Kraken team, I should do it. The weekend series was a split, 3 points overall for the Seattle Kraken. We're going to break it all down. But first, I have to let you know today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. And I kind of wish Brandon Tanev would have taken 50% off that hit he laid on Shane Wright. Now listen, Kraken fans. First question of the day. Are you yay or nay on the hit on Shane Wright? Is it fair or a little foul? Let me know in the comments. Here's my thought. I mess with Ty Cartier. That's my takeaway. I mess with Ty Cartier. And after the game, Dan Bilesma was asked not once, but twice about the Tanev hit. First time he was asked something like, hey, Tanev comes back. Were you surprised to see the hit he laid on Shane Wright? One word response, no. Then he goes on to say, no, I wasn't surprised. That's how Brandon Tanev plays. And he then goes on to say Wright should have expected it. And then, that, hey, Wright should have heard me say, watch out. Interesting. I think the first answer, no. To me, listening to it, it was giving, I have a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it vibes. Now, just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it's not a fair hockey play. So again, question of the day, fair or foul, the hit on Tanev? As for me, if you're an everydayer or an OGer, you know how I feel about hockey fights. You know how I feel about arbitrary hits. I do think physicality is critically important in all sports, really, and especially hockey. And listen, there was not, a bunch of YouTube videos, at least that I know of, when I was playing sports at my peak. I might have done some things because sometimes you do have to set a tone. This hit came at not even halfway through the first period. Again, Shane Wright goes in, its left shoulder first, upended off of his skates, big, heavy hit. Now, if Tanev is on your team, you probably like that hit. If Tanev is not on your team, you probably don't like that hit. So it's a little bit maybe confusing as a Kraken fan, to have to deal with the emotions of that hit. What I will say is, again, physicality in sports and in hockey, and with Brandon Tanev, it's about sending a message. I can't speak for sure about what that hit meant for Brandon Tanev, but listen, he's not yours anymore, Seattle. He's not. And for me, at least some, if not all, of that hit was sending a message. He's with Winnipeg. This is a great Winnipeg team. We were able to go down to the wire with a top team, the top team in the NHL once again. And, in the next segment, I want to talk about, is this real or not real for the Seattle Kraken as far as what our potential is? But if I take away the fact that I am here with you Monday through Friday talking about the Seattle Kraken, if I come at it as a sports fan, if I come at it as a former athlete, a very washed athlete, I might go fair. I'm not saying it's 100% cross the T's, dot the I's, in the rule book. I mean, there's the rule book, there's the unspoken rules, and then there's sportsmanship. There's a lot of different rules at any given time. If I go from a neutral perspective, it was overkill. And he did what he did. He said what he said without saying words. That's how I would say it as a neutral party. As a Kraken fan or as a Kraken host, I have a few different things. One is, how dare you? How dare you? You didn't just put a hit. He wasn't going after Larson or Alexiak. He went for Shane Wright. I could be wrong. That just seems deliberate to me. That's number one. Point the second. Where were you when we needed big hits? And see, here's the thing. I don't know if this could be me being irrational, because again, I'm giving you from the fan perspective, from the Locked On Kraken host perspective. I know for a fact there have been games when Brandon Tanev was a part of the Seattle Kraken roster where we could have used a big body hit like that. Here's the thing. Was he going to take the head off of, was that his intention to take Shane Wright's head off? I don't believe so. Was he trying to send a message to the Seattle Kraken organization? As I don't know how far up maybe that message was going, but definitely to the players, he was definitely sending a message. I will go 10 toes down on that. And I'm not mad at that part of it. But dude, we've needed some messages sent. And I'm not just talking about this season. I'm talking about throughout. You could argue, Tanev's ice time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not that Tanev hasn't played that way for the Seattle Kraken, but it was not, from my recollection and my memory. I mean, again, if you got that in you, bring that dog every game, especially in games where we need it. So, again, am I being irrational? Am I misremembering things? It's very possible, because I feel some kind of way. Again, as someone who's your Locked On Kraken host, I feel some kind of way. And I absolutely would have done what Ty Cartier did, and probably a little bit more, because I'm a little, like when I feel disrespected, everybody's going to know. And I don't care. That's just who I am. I go hard in the paint for me, but especially for my own, like my teammates, my family, etc., my people. And I like, that's what I like. My overall takeaway is, that's why I mess with you, Ty Cartier. So I hope the reset for Ty Cartier, I hope this experience for Ty Cartier is going to propel him to make sure he's doing what he has to do to stay on the ice. Because now we don't have Tanev. In case y'all didn't know, Tanev said, I'm not with you anymore. Who's going to step up? Early returns, Ty Cartier. So I'm not mad at that part of it. I'll say this, because for me, it's borderline. It's like one of those, you don't like it, but it's not that it's all the way terrible. We've had some nasty, egregious hits laid on Kraken players. This doesn't hype to that level. Like if Brandon Tanev never played for the Seattle Kraken. So if you've responded already, now respond again, if you will, in the comments on YouTube, or you can hit me up on Blue Sky, elindsay08 on Blue Sky. If you felt some kind of way, whatever your answer was when I asked you, was it fair or foul? Now, if Brandon Tanev had never played for the Seattle Kraken, would your answer stay the same? Would your answer stay the same? For me, I still wouldn't like it. I still would be like, yo, that's why I mess with Ty Cartier. But would I be so hurt by it? I'm not sure. As far as we know, Shane Wright, good to go. That's also another key to this, although maybe it shouldn't always be. I don't know. That's a conversation for another day. Didn't love it. Didn't love it. Definitely, he's on my list. Brandon Tanev, you are on my list. Okay. And also, if Brandon Tanev was feeling some kind of way, I mean, maybe we got to look into that. And I don't know if this is directly related, but as I've been seeing, I thought I was going to break down these two games a little bit more, but then I got a little bit excitable about talking about Brandon Tanev. So I'll try to interweave some analysis about the two games over the weekend in the next segment. But it got me thinking, right? Especially this thing with Tanev versus Shane Wright. Is it fair? Is it foul? Everyone kind of talking about it, knowing that I personally didn't appreciate it, didn't completely hate it as a hockey fan, as a sports fan. But there's something about it where I'm like, okay, you're on the list. Do it again and let's see what happens. Do it again, Brandon. See what happens. See what happens. Mess around, find out, right? I would say, I just got sad. I would say Bjork around, find out, but can't do that anymore either. Oh man, I just made myself super sad. I walked right into that. Okay, my point is, as I weep while I play the transition slide, fair or foul on the hit? I want to know, and I'm going to use the last two games to try and figure out what is real about this Seattle hockey team this year. Because you got a guy that puts a hit like that down. Real or not real, Brandon Tanev had an axe to grind. And if he did, real or not real, there was some beef on this team. I don't know. More so, though, real or not real, this is a team that can go toe-to-toe with Winnipeg and just underperformed. So we'll try to answer that and also talk a little bit about goaltending coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Hey there, hockey fans. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Factor. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's calorie smart, protein plus, or keto. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast and use code FACTOR, FACTOR, PODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTOR Podcast at factormeals.com/Factor Podcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by wonderful pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking, Seattle Kraken fans, with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Let's continue on. Real or not real? This Seattle Kraken team can consistently be the type of team that can play not 1, not 2, but 3 one-goal games against a top team like the Winnipeg Jets. Real or not real? And then let's add, of those 3 one-goal games, 2 go to overtime. Now, granted, all 3 were losses, but all of what I just told you, all of that is real. So why is it that we can play the Winnipeg Jets the way we play the Winnipeg Jets this year and struggle against other teams? That's what I find interesting about this weekend tilt. If we look at the standings, and we see Florida, Tampa, Toronto at the top of the Atlantic, Washington, Carolina, New Jersey at the top of the Metropolitan. We've played well against Washington, played well against Carolina, played well against the Florida Panthers. Ottawa and New York and Montreal actually in the mix for the wild card. Montreal just under that line. If we go to the West, Winnipeg at the top, Dallas and Colorado. In our division, Vegas Golden Knights, Edmonton Oilers, and LA Kings, Minnesota Wild, and the Canucks just in that wild card spot, St. Louis just under the line. So, of those teams that I've mentioned, we've had some solid games against those teams. And this is where the frustration sometimes comes. Even in the win against Utah, we heard Dan Bylsma, especially because of that second period, got a little wild and crazy. Philipp Grubauer in net. We're going to talk a little bit more about him in the upcoming segment. So, what we heard from Dan Bylsma was that in that Utah game, there were costly turnovers. Got the win, but costly turnovers. And Allison Lucan, in her instant analysis, we know that the Kraken allowed 6 chances on turnovers. Now, we had 8 chances off of turnovers, but we allowed 6. Cleaning up possession, being mindful of where you are when you have possession. Some of the things that Dan Bylsma didn't quite see in the Utah game in a win. And then, we see what happened against Winnipeg, which I thought was a pretty solid game also. Now, I will say, got a quality start from Philipp Grubauer in the Utah game, not considered, statistically speaking, a quality start from Joey Daccord. We also heard from Dan Bylsma that, you need your goaltenders in tight games like that, 2-2 game, late in the game. You need to get good saves. You got to get good saves. And that's an interesting conversation. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next segment. But again, real or not real, this team can be a top team, a wild card team, maybe a team that is representing the Western Conference and the Pacific Division outright. On the one hand, you have some games where you're like, heck yes, like the games against Winnipeg. The reason, though, that I have for weeks, months, maybe we can even go as far back as a season or two. The reason I've been saying not real, don't buy it, not drinking the Kool-Aid is because of the inconsistency. Whether we're talking the resets, yes, the injuries outside of the controllables in that scenario, how Philipp Grubauer was deployed. Again, I'll talk a little bit about goaltending in the upcoming segment. I mean, it just is a little tough. It's a little tough to see this team and think that it's real, that they can be a contender. But it is real because of the performances that they have against top teams, which is what you want the benchmark, the barometer to be. And Dan Bylsma said something to that effect, right? After the Winnipeg loss. Disappointing, he called it, because of how the team played, but a benchmark game. So then why is it that there are other games where the Kraken just can't get it together? And the reason I wanted to tie this in loosely to Brandon Tanev, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into the hit a little too much, the reverberations of the boards a little too much. I don't know that you put a hit on a young guy like that to solely send a message that, hey, yeah, I'm with this team now. Sorry, buddy. Like, welcome to the NHL. Unless you're feeling some kind of way about the breakup. You know what I'm saying? You know what it's kind of like, I don't know, making comments on your ex's Instagram post or something like that, because you know that what you're saying is true. Is it kind? Is it quote unquote appropriate? I don't know. Who cares? What is the line? Maybe it's towing a line, maybe it's not towing a line, but you have to think that some of that is involved. Because the way this team is playing now, the way this team has played at certain times is unfortunately not a picture of their consistent play. These are more snapshots than the identity of the Kraken team that we've seen for the majority of the season. Was it certain guys that were tiffing? Was there, disagreements, playing time? I mean, let's keep it real. We knew going into this season and probably at stretches of last year that Tanev was a bubble guy, right? For maybe a few reasons. But what kind of burns my grits, as I've been saying to you for the last few weeks, months, years, is that the team, not really since season 2, season 3, the injuries were really bad. But that playing for and with pride, leaning into the Kraken way, that's Kraken hockey, baby, right? Like, what is Kraken hockey? Can we even say we know what Kraken hockey is this year? So the real or not real of it all, I mean, I love that we're seeing some of this now. I love that we're getting good performances from Philipp Grubauer, who, again, I'll talk about in the next segment. But why couldn't we get this before? What was the failing? Was it the guys that were moved? Is it something with the coaching staff? Is it something with the front office, including how the team was built? Yes, you can factor in the injuries, but you don't make that as an excuse. What is it that is holding this team back from the Winnipeg games more often than not being the norm and not the exception, right? What is holding this team back? And I don't know that I know the answer. I do feel that the energy is different since the trade deadline. And you can't overstate or disregard, I guess I should say. You can't disregard that when you have a shakeup the way the Kraken did. Sometimes, whoop, you get sharp, right? You get alerted to attention. Listen, I'll be honest. I've had to have those conversations with employers before where it's like, hey, we tried this approach. Now we're going to do this. And if it's not going to resonate when we get to this point, then we might need to figure some things out. Not an uncomfortable place. Sometimes it awakens you. Sometimes, honestly, it's like, you know what? Thank you for saying that. This doesn't align with my values, but those are tough conversations. They're very real conversations in the adult world. But does any of that have a bearing on what we've seen from the Seattle Kraken team this season? Because as we're about to talk about in the next segment, I think we can all agree that Philipp Grubauer feels some kind of way about the team that he's currently on, how much longer he'll be on the Kraken, and if anything can be, or if there's any desire from either party, if not both, to reconcile. I don't know that we know yet. But once again, Philipp Grubauer gets a quality start. Once again, Philipp Grubauer gets a win. And once again, after the game, when Philipp Grubauer is asked why he's performing the way he is, he talks about getting regular, consistent reps in net. And I think he has a point, which is why the final segment of today's episode is called Play the Man. We'll get after it coming up on Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. The dashboard is fantastic. I use this for my small business, and I love that you can track all of your accounts, investments, and its spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building your wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, and play the man. I've said this before his most recent start, or his first start since coming back. I said it between his first start since coming back from Coachella Valley and his start and win against Utah. And I'm saying it again. Play the man. Why do I want us to play Philipp Grubauer? One, season's done as far as advancing to the playoffs, so we don't have to worry about that if that was what was holding us back. Now, I do want to put in a caveat. Whether it's because of some of what I said earlier or not, I'm not sure. Philipp Grubauer is playing different. He has been alerted to attention. Maybe he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I don't know, but he's playing different. So is that a win for the Kraken? Yes. Except I'll go back to things that I've said before. The determination to get to that point with Philipp Grubauer came so late that the season was pretty much, it was pretty much, we knew that the Kraken wasn't going to make the playoffs, right? So if you're going to do something that drastic, and if you had to take the relationship to that level, I mean, as someone who talks about the Kraken Monday through Friday, I would have preferred that you got to that point a little earlier. But we didn't. The Kraken organization didn't. We're here now. Philipp Grubauer is playing better games, and or the Kraken are playing better games in front of Philipp Grubauer. I mean, both are should be worthy of consideration. Just play the guy. Why do I say that? Also, because Joey Daccord has not had quality starts in his last few starts. He got pulled from that game when it was Coco was called up. I think Joey Daccord is gassed. I don't know, physically, he's had a few injuries here and there. I think mentally he's a little bit gassed, maybe emotionally gassed. I don't know. I can't speak to that. I can only imagine that this has been a difficult season for him in a lot of different ways. I just don't think he seems sharp, Joey Daccord. And so just play Philipp Grubauer, man. Just freaking play Philipp Grubauer. Why else do I say that? If we're going to offload him, and maybe these are conversations that Grubauer is having with the organization, but if we're going to offload him anyway, let him have some reps where he's showing what he can do. Just play the guy. Just play the guy. I don't know what it hurts to give Philipp Grubauer some rest, to give Joey Daccord some rest, to give Philipp Grubauer what he's been asking for. And he's kind of proving himself to be right. Is this also kind of a forget you, man? I told you I needed reps, man. You didn't give me the reps, man. And now I have my reps, man. And look at what I'm doing, dude. It could be some of that. Like I'm that level of petty as well. I told you this is what I needed. You didn't give it to me. Now I have it. And here's what I can do. This is what happens when you let me cook. I don't know. It seems like an interesting situation, and it's an interesting conversation to have in the same episode where we're talking about, is this team real or not? Like, can they be a real, a real contender or no? And then also thinking about, does Brandon Tanev also have an axe to grind with the organization? I could be wrong, but I just don't see in my heart of hearts, mind of minds, that Brandon Tanev went for Shane Wright because of anything between him and Shane Wright. I could be wrong, but Shane Wright literally represents the future of this organization. And I think that was a tactical attack. I say attack because I mean he went into him. I don't want to say attack and be like, oh my God, it was, he assaulted him on the ice. No, it's hockey, physical game, whatever. But he zoned in, I do think, on Shane Wright. And I think those messages were meant for higher up than Shane Wright, or maybe even the roster. But again, I mess with Ty Cartier. Just play Philipp Grubauer. I mean, I feel like I talk about this a lot on the show, or have been talking about it a lot. I literally got into a heated disagreement with Zame when he was presenting why the Kraken might want to do it. And in my mind, I couldn't wrap my head around why you would send Philipp Grubauer, I should say. We were talking about if you should send Philipp Grubauer down to Coachella Valley as a paper transaction to make him available for the Calder Cup playoffs. Vehemently disagreed with that. And we talked about it on the episode, but like, just play the guy. I want this saga to be done. Play Philipp Grubauer, give Joey Daccord some rest. And I do wonder if Grubauer get into a groove with Grubauer. I'm going to workshop that. Anyway, giving Grubauer games, giving him some consistency, continuity, is that enough to revive this relationship? I don't know. I don't think that it should be, because before the reset for Philipp Grubauer, there were questions. Now, I don't think all of the things that Grubauer gets heat for were only on him. And sometimes when things just aren't working out, you can mutually agree to part ways. And we're in a situation where it just feels like the scales keep tipping as to which party, the Seattle Kraken or Philipp Grubauer in his camp, which party is trying to best the other in I told you so. It just feels kind of gross. Play the guy, give Joey some rest, end this saga. Please, 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 please. I don't know. Let me know how you feel about that. But I especially want to know, fair, thumbs up, or foul, thumbs down. Brandon Tanev's hit on Shane Wright. That's our episode. Hey, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And always, I remind you to hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud, we say, let's go Kraken. We got a game day episode coming up as your Seattle Kraken hit the road to Chicago. All right. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. I am Erica L. Ayala, your host, and I will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everyone.